Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. Today we're tackling a topic that I know a lot of parents might be dealing with, and that's potty training.
Yeah,
And specifically, we're focusing on potty training for children on the autism spectrum.
right.
We're going deep on this one, folks. We are diving into the source, cheap ABA helpful tips and advice for potty training an autistic child.
It's a good one.
This source is really aiming to make this information really accessible to parents, which I love.
Yeah.
We're going to try to break down some of those common challenges that parents face, give you some real practical advice and strategies to use, and hopefully offer some encouragement along the way because we know it can be tough.
For sure.
So let's start, I guess, at the very beginning. When we talk about potty training, one of those first questions, and I know for me this was a big one, is knowing if your child is even ready to start this whole process.
It's such a good question. And I think what's interesting is that the idea of readiness, when we're talking about, kids on the spectrum, it might look a little different
Oh.
than maybe kind of what we typically think about. So instead of focusing so much on a specific age, like, oh, they should be potty trained by this age, it's more helpful, like the source talks about, to look for signs that your child is developing the skills and they're starting to understand, what going potty is all about.
So what kind of signs specifically should parents be looking out for?
Well, one thing that they highlight in the source is improved motor skills,
Okay.
which seems kind of basic, but, can your child balance well enough to sit on the toilet?
Hmm.
Can they, manage their clothing? Can they pull their pants up and down?
These are all things I never would have even thought about.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, those little things we take for granted. Another important thing, and this is a big one, is communication. So even if your child isn't, speaking in full sentences yet, can they understand simple words or gestures that you're using related to going potty? And then also, even if they're nonverbal, are they showing any interest in the bathroom? Like, are they interested in the toilet? Are they maybe trying to sit on it? Things like that can be signs that, okay, they're getting ready. They're starting to kind of understand.
It's a good reminder that communication doesn't have to be talking in full sentences.
Exactly.
Right.
There's so many ways to communicate.
So many other ways. And I think, as parents, it's so easy to get caught up in those timelines.
Oh, for sure.
Right. Like you hear those stories about the kid who was potty trained when they were 18 months old.
Right.
And you're like, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
So how do we as parents kind of get out of that headspace of comparing our kids' development to others?
Yeah. I think it's really important to remember that every single child develops at their own pace. And that's especially true for children on the spectrum.
Of course.
So while some kids might, pick it up really quickly, others might need a little more time and support, and that's okay.
So no need to panic if your kid isn't potty trained, right at the same time as all their, neurotypical peers,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, the research actually suggests that, on average, children with autism tend to become what they call toilet independent a little bit later.
Okay.
It's closer to 3.5 years old
Okay.
compared to 2.5 for neurotypical children. But again, that's just an average.
Sure.
And some children might take even longer than that, especially when we're talking about having full bowel control.
Right, right. It sounds kind of the biggest takeaway there is patience
Yes.
and understanding.
Absolutely. It's not a race.
Mm-hmm.
It's really about supporting your child through a process that might look a little different for them.
I love that. So let's get into, I guess, some of the nitty-gritty here, some of those specific challenges that parents might encounter. Because I know that the source highlights some things that are very specific to children on the autism spectrum, when it comes to potty training.
Totally. And it's helpful to kind of be aware of those potential challenges so that you can kind of be prepared with strategies to address them.
Of course.
So the source really focuses on 4 main areas.
Yeah.
One is communication barriers, sensory sensitivities, physical difficulties, and then also just adapting to changes in routine.
Okay, let's unpack those.
Yeah.
Let's unpack those one by one, starting with communication. So how can parents help to bridge that gap if their child struggles to, express their needs or understand, the instructions that we're giving them related to potty training? This is where those visual aids can really come in handy, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Instead of just relying on us saying, go potty, think about using picture cards
Right.
that show each step of the process, like going to the bathroom, sitting on the potty, getting dressed, all of that. You can even create a little visual schedule
Oh, I love that.
that they can follow along with.
Yeah.
And that can make a world of difference because it just makes it so much easier for them to understand.
Yeah.
And they can kind of like feel more independent.
That's a great visual. I can just picture that little chart, like right next to the potty.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned sensory sensitivities.
Yes.
And I know this is a big one for a lot of autistic kids. So how do sensory issues kind of come into play during potty training?
Well, imagine if you had to go potty, but then you were like totally thrown off
Right.
by the feeling of like cold water on your skin
Yeah.
or the texture of toilet paper. Like those sensory experiences that we might not even think twice about can be really, really distracting or even upsetting to some children on the spectrum.
Yeah, it's like a whole other layer
Right.
that we don't even think about. And I imagine that can lead to some resistance.
Mhm.
Maybe some like meltdowns even.
Absolutely. So the source has some really good advice here.
Yeah.
One of the things they say is to actually transition to underwear earlier in the process.
Okay.
Because that allows the child to like feel the wetness or, if they have an accident, to feel that soiling
Right.
more directly.
Oh, okay.
And so it helps them connect those sensations to, oh, I need to use the potty.
It's about increasing their body awareness, but in like a very concrete way.
Exactly. Exactly. And then the other thing, and this is huge, I think, is responding to accidents with calmness and understanding.
Oh, for sure.
It's not about punishment.
Right.
It's not about making the child feel bad. It's really about creating that safe and supportive learning environment where they know that, okay, mistakes are okay. It's part of the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, because getting upset isn't going to help anything.
Exactly. It's just going to make it worse.
Yeah, totally. Now, what about the physical aspect of potty training? Because I know that the source mentioned physical difficulties as a potential challenge. So what does that look like?
Yeah, so for some children, even just the actual physical act of like getting on and off the toilet can be tricky.
Right.
They might have like coordination challenges or muscle tone issues,
Ew.
or maybe certain movements are just like really uncomfortable for them.
So it's not just about recognizing when they need to go, it's about their bodies cooperating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the good news is there are things that you can do.
Okay, good.
The source suggests like opting for clothing that's loose fitting
Okay.
and has like really easy fasteners like Velcro or, elastic waistbands,
Makes sense.
just so there's not a lot of like struggling and frustration.
Right. Those fine motor skills again.
Yes. And then using a smaller potty seat that sits directly on the toilet can make a big difference too in terms of comfort and stability.
Okay, those are really good practical tips.
Yeah.
Okay, last but not least, let's talk about routine. Because we know that a lot of autistic children, they really thrive on routine. So how can parents kind of navigate all of the changes that come with potty training?
Right. So this is where consistency is super, super important.
Okay.
The source really emphasizes like establishing a regular potty schedule.
Right.
And this might mean taking your child to the bathroom even if they haven't like explicitly said that they need to go,
Okay.
because the goal is to really make those trips to the bathroom just a predictable part of their day.
So it's about building those positive associations
Yes,
with the bathroom and just making it part of like what we do.
exactly. Make it normal,
Yeah, just part of life.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit now and talk about some specific strategies for success, because we've covered some of the challenges, but now I want to know, our listeners are going to be like, okay, but what do we do?
Right. How do we actually make this happen?
Yeah, like what are the actual strategies we can use?
Well, the source has some really, really practical advice in this area. So the first thing that they highlight is just the importance of support and praise.
Okay.
But it's a little deeper than just like good job and giving them a sticker.
Okay.
It's about really recognizing that for some autistic children, verbal praise alone might not be that impactful.
Okay. So what does meaningful support look like in the context of potty training?
It's about understanding your child's like unique needs and preferences.
Okay.
So, for example, instead of relying solely on verbal praise, you could use visual aids like a sticker chart
Great.
where they get to like put a sticker on every time they, have a success.
I love that.
And it's really important to like maintain that calm and encouraging demeanor
Right.
throughout the process,
Even when things get messy.
even when things get messy, because your child is picking up on your energy.
That's such an important reminder. It's not just what you say, it's how you're acting.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And then offering praise for any sign of cooperation. no matter how small.
So we're looking for those little wins.
Yes, those micro celebrations along the way. Maybe
Yes.
they sat on the potty for a few seconds. Maybe they, tried to pull down their pants. Like those little things
Yeah.
are worth celebrating.
Totally. Okay, and that kind of ties into the next one you're going to talk about, right? Which
Mhm.
is rewards,
Yes.
which is huge.
So using rewards, but again, this is where it's not like a one-size-fits-all.
Right, because a sticker might not work for every kid.
Exactly. So the key is to figure out what motivates your child.
Right?
Like, what are they really into?
Yes.
Is it a certain snack? Is it a few minutes of watching a video? Is it a special toy?
Right.
Whatever it is, and then offer it immediately after a successful potty use
Okay.
so that they can start to make that connection in their mind.
It's all about that positive reinforcement. Now, I imagine consistency is crucial here.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Right.
Especially when there are multiple caregivers involved.
Yes.
So the source really stresses the importance of clarity and consistency. Everyone who interacts with your child, parents, grandparents, other caregivers, they all need to be on the same page.
Oh, yeah. It can't just be mom who's doing it and then,
Exactly.
grandma's got a different set of rules and
Everyone needs to be singing from the same song sheet, basically.
yes, exactly. Okay, and our last strategy. How can parents make this make potty time feel less like a chore and more just like a natural part of the day?
Right, because ultimately that's what we want, right?
Exactly. Yeah, for it to be not a big deal.
Yeah, for it to just become second nature.
Yes.
So this is where routine integration comes in.
Okay.
Instead of treating potty breaks as these isolated events,
Right.
try to weave them seamlessly into your child's existing routines.
Okay.
Maybe it's like going to the bathroom right after snack time or before bath time. Things like that. By associating it with these familiar activities, you're making it a lot more predictable and a lot less daunting.
So again, we're going back to those positive associations and that natural flow.
Exactly.
It feels like we've covered so much good stuff today
We really have.
about this. But for those parents who are listening who are just starting out on this whole potty training adventure, what would you say is the most important thing for them to keep in mind as they get started?
Oh, that's such a good question. If there's one thing you take away from this whole deep dive,
Yeah.
it's that patience and understanding and celebrate those little victories. It's everything.
Yeah.
Progress, it might not always be linear. It might not always be
It
pretty.
never is, right?
Exactly. There's
Mhm.
going to be accidents. There's going to be setbacks, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's all part of the process.
It's about the progress, not the perfection.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Every little step that your child takes toward independence,
Right.
no matter how small it might seem to us.
Yeah. It's a reason to celebrate.
Totally.
And by creating that positive and supportive environment, you're really setting them up for success in the long run.
I love that. That's a great note to end on. So to everyone listening out there, we'd love for you to, kind of keep this conversation going.
Yeah.
Maybe think about what resonated most with you today. What's one small change that you can make
Right.
to support your child on this potty training journey? Every journey is unique, just like your child, and we are here to cheer you on every step of the way.
We are.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.